What happens when a man doesn't need to prove himself, yet every eye in the room turns toward him? What happens when silence speaks louder than words, when presence feels heavier than touch, and when the fire behind a man's eyes tells a story before his lips ever move? Chosen one, this is the mystery you carry. When you step into a room, it is not your clothes, your posture, or even the strength of your frame that makes the atmosphere shift. It is the current alive behind your gaze. That spark is not desperate. It is not rehearsed. It is not begging for attention. It is the kind of fire that does not announce itself yet cannot be ignored. Feminine women feel it before they even see you. They sense it in the air, in their bones, in the quiet way their bodies react without permission. Because your eyes do not wander for approval, they rest with certainty. They belong to a man who knows who he is, what he carries, and what he refuses to dilute just to be accepted. Your gaze unsettles because it is honest. It is the haunting of a man who has walked through fire and refused to be consumed. There is survival in your silence. There is gravity in your presence. And that is what ignites her. Not because you chase, not because you charm, but because you simply are. She feels it before her mind catches up. The subtle fire under your stillness is not a performance. It is truth. When her eyes meet yours, her body trembles in ways she cannot admit. Not because you devour her with hunger, but because you see through her masks. You see the part of her most men overlook, the part that is vulnerable, wild, alive, and longing to be recognized. You don't flatter her performance. You don't applaud her mask. You simply stand still enough for her to feel naked without being undressed, safe yet undone, exposed, not exploited. Your sexual energy does not parade. It does not scream. It does not need to be proven. It hums beneath your skin like lightning before the storm. Everyone feels it, even if they can't name it. And feminine women especially crave it because it is not invasive. It is not scattered. It is not desperate. It is sovereign, and sovereignty cannot be ignored. The way you listen, chosen one, is its own kind of seduction. You do not rush. You do not interrupt. You do not pretend to care to earn points. You listen like every word is sacred, like her voice is scripture, like her presence is ceremony. When she speaks, she feels more than heard. She feels received. And that is what undoes her. Because in a world that treats her words as background noise, you hold them like thunder. You hear her with your whole body, not just your ears. You don't just take in her words. You take in her essence trembling beneath them. And that, more than charm, more than compliments, is what intoxicates her. Your silence is not emptiness. It is presence. It is thunder in disguise. It is the pause that does not push her away, but pulls her closer. When you withhold noise, you give her permission to exhale. You give her nervous system permission to rest. You give her the space her feminine craves, but rarely receives. Your silence is not absence. It is acknowledgement. It reshapes the rhythm of the room. It slows time. It thickens the air. And it makes her want to speak more honestly than she ever has. Not because you asked her to, but because your stillness makes it safe. She will remember it later. Chosen one. She will lie awake replaying it in her mind, trying to explain why 10 minutes with you felt like more than years of small talk. She will tell her friends it was the best conversation she's ever had, though she cannot explain why. She cannot describe how your silence held her louder than applause, how your gaze steadied her storm, how your presence made her feel not judged, not consumed, but recognized. And she will not forget, because it wasn't your words that marked her. It was your stillness. You are not chasing her body. You are speaking to her soul. And the soul responds before the mind can rationalize. That is why her eyes flicker. That is why her breath slows. That is why her voice softens. It is not because you played a role, but because you carried presence. Presence that is aligned. Presence that is unapologetic. Presence that is truth. You do not seduce with lines. You seduce with alignment. You are not throwing sparks to impress. You are the fire that sustains. You are not begging for validation. You are anchored in certainty. You are not conquering her identity. You are mirroring it. And that is why she feels more of herself with you than she does with anyone else around you. She does not need to be impressive. She feels free to be. She does not need to be loud. She feels safe to soften. She does not need to pretend. She feels remembered. Chosen one, this is the paradox of your power. The less you do, the more is felt. The less you speak, the more is heard. The less you chase, the more you draw. The world screams for attention, but you do not join the noise. You allow silence to breathe, and that silence is the symphony she has been aching for. She doesn't fully understand it. She only knows that your presence does not leave her. You are not the spark she forgets. You are the fire she cannot extinguish. Your silence is not weakness. It is structure. It is protection. It is the gravity that holds space for her essence to unfold. You do not invade. You do not demand. You remain. And in that remaining, you become unforgettable. Because when you stand before her, you are not performing masculinity. You are embodying it. And that embodiment changes everything. So she remembers you, not because you dazzled her with wit, not because you competed for her attention, but because you did what almost no man does. You listened like she was sacred. You saw her without consuming her. You gave her silence without abandoning her. And you carried a fire that did not burn her body, but awakened her soul. That is why her eyes betray her before her lips can. That is why she replays the memory in her head. That is why she cannot put into words why you linger in her spirit. Because she felt more alive in your stillness than she has in years of noise. And once a woman feels that, she never forgets. Chosen one, you are not the man she runs from. You are the man her body remembers. You are not the boy who shouts to be seen. You are the king whose silence shakes her soul. You are not the spark that fades. You are the fire that remains. And that, above all else, is why she cannot let go of you. She just has to be. That rare moment, sacred and almost unexplainable, where something inside her stirs and she begins to whisper truths she has never dared to share with another soul. And she whispers not because you coaxed her, not because you pressured her, but because your presence feels like safety. Your energy is the first place her spirit recognized as shelter. And in that shelter, honesty could finally come alive. With you, her words do not feel like a risk. They feel like freedom. Her silence no longer feels like protection. It feels like a wound that can finally heal. and she finds herself speaking, not because she planned to, but because she can. Chosen one, understand this. The reason feminine women are drawn to you is not found in what you do, but in what you don't need to do. You do not chase applause. You do not manipulate attention. You do not bend yourself to please or beg for validation. You let your presence speak. You let your energy arrive before your words do. And in that steady silence, she finds her own voice. She rediscovers her own essence. She becomes brighter, more radiant, more alive because you were already standing still, grounded, whole, without trying to prove a single thing. That is the kind of silence that doesn't just make her talk, it makes her trust. And that trust becomes the soil in which true desire grows. You are the paradox her soul didn't know it was longing for. You are the contradiction she never thought existed. You are power without the need to roar, strength that does not crush, gentleness that does not weaken itself. In your presence, she feels something dangerous, not to her body, but to her illusions, to her masks, to her defenses. You are dangerous to the walls she built to survive. You are dangerous to the belief that no man could hold her. With you, she finds herself undone, disarmed, not by force, but by tenderness, not weakness, not submission, but grounded, unshakable tenderness. The kind that says, I see you. I don't need to fix you. I only need you to be real. And this is what shocks her. It is not your appearance alone. It is not the polished charm of your words. It is the deeper reality that a man of such force, such quiet command, can also hold such devastating gentleness without losing his power. When you speak, your voice is not a weapon demanding obedience. It is an invitation to truth. When you touch, your energy is not a conquest. It is an honor. And that paradox shatters her old programming. It breaks every false belief she carried about what masculinity must be. Because you do not fit the mold. You burn the mold down with nothing more than steady eyes and breath that does not break pace, with presence that refuses to chase, control, or beg. You are the most attractive man she has ever known. Not because of features she can measure, but because you do not need her approval to breathe. You do not need her affection to feel alive. You are already whole, already radiant, already complete. Even your sexual energy speaks differently. It is not invasive. It is embracing. It is not rushing. It is patient. It does not possess. It protects. She feels it when you say her name, not with ownership, but with reverence. She feels it when you look at her, not with hunger that consumes, but with recognition that remembers. And in that recognition, she feels something ancient stir, as though she is not being looked at for her body, but as though her soul itself is being remembered. You become her unexpected softness. She does not want you to rescue her. She does not want you to control her. She does not want to be led blindly. She wants to rest, to exhale, to open. And you never once ask her to surrender. You simply make surrender safe. That is the quiet brilliance of your masculine presence. It does not force her to yield. It creates a space where melting becomes natural. And in that melting, she finds a version of herself she never knew was alive, more intuitive, more open, more honest, more alive. This is what you do, chosen one, and you do it without effort, without manipulation, without performance. You do not seduce her with shallow tricks. You liberate her with truth. And in that liberation, she finds the craving she didn't even know existed inside her. Not for your hands on her body, but for your presence around her soul. That is why she cannot forget you. That is why she cannot look away. Not because you tried to impress her, but because you were steady when everything else in her life was storm. You became the calm her soul had been thirsting for without even knowing it. When your eyes land on her, it is unlike any gaze she has ever endured. Not because you undress her with them, but because you refuse to. You do not reduce her. You do not break her down into parts. You do not consume her. You do not devour. You see her, and in that seeing, there is no greed, no agenda, no hunger, only reverence. That kind of gaze transforms her posture. It makes her stand taller, yet softens her edges, not because she is performing, but because she is finally safe to be seen. You strip away her armor without ever touching her, and you do it with nothing more than a look that carries no judgment, only appreciation. That is why she remembers you long after you are gone. That is why she cannot erase you from her spirit. Not because of words, not because of touch, but because of the way you behold. You see her not as flesh to conquer, but as spirit to honor. You make her feel divine not by worshiping her, but by refusing to possess her. You do not try to tame her. You allow her to exist in fullness. And this permission, this rare, sacred, grounded permission, is what turns mere admiration into devotion. Even if she leaves, the echo of your presence follows her. The memory of your gaze lingers. The weight of your stillness continues to anchor her thoughts. She remembers not how you entertained her, but how you elevated her. She remembers not how you distracted her, but how you made her more herself. Your beauty lies not in your body, but in your power to awaken hers. You do not need her to perform for you. You do not need her to impress you. You simply allow her to be. And in that allowance, she meets herself in ways no mirror could ever show her. Chosen one, when the crowds disappear, when the noise fades, when the laughter stops, when her phone finally falls silent, she remembers you, not for excitement, not for escape, but because your presence was sanctuary. You did not simply entertain her, you grounded her. You wrapped her spirit in peace and reminded her of her own depth. She finds herself returning to your memory not for thrill, but for alignment, not for drama, but for restoration. This is the difference between men and chosen ones. This is the difference between attraction and reverence. You do not stir only her body, you awaken her soul. You do not invite her into temporary pleasure. You draw her toward eternal meaning. You do not just pull her into lust. You invite her into remembrance. That is why she calls you unforgettable. That is why she feels you even in absence. That is why she cannot replace you. You do not try to fix her storms. You do not silence her chaos. You simply remain still in the midst of it. And that stillness in you becomes stillness in her. That calm in you becomes the calm in her bones. You have become the voice she trusts when the world grows too loud. Not because you drown out the noise, but because your presence reminds her she was never meant to fight it alone.